Hi, Rob Brown here from Memphis, SEC Sidelines Sports Network. Brenden Martin down in Ocala with a cup of Bailey's Irish whiskey in the morning there.
That was the original sports talk radio that Buddy and I bought together when I was 21.
Hey,
AM 900 went to AM Sports Talk.
Hey, look, I love those old sports talk shows. I remember in the late 70s listening in Memphis on 3WE to George Lapidus, Jeff Weinberger, people like that. Got me hooked as a kid. And what I remember the most was they always had something to talk about. And we do. Lot to talk about. Gators got another win at Exact Tech Arena last night.
Oh, my God, they're good.
O'Connell Center is what the O-Dome.
The O-Dome.
Auburn, not so fortunate, but Tennessee's good. Auburn didn't lose the game. Tennessee won that game. But Auburn, 84 on the road in that environment, I think they're going to be strong. Alabama, what a comeback. Hey, lot to talk about. Coach Matt Dean checks in with us. Cannot help but say a little something about Caitlin Clark. My God, is she not the face of women's basketball? She might be the face of sports, men's or women's, out there signing autographs with the kids, trying to be someone they can look up to. First class. I'm really impressed with her. John Hartwell, AD at ULM, will check in with us. A couple of serious hoop heads will be on with us in a minute. And Gary Harris, Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9, WVUA TV 23. Also does Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube. If you are having any trouble getting to the show, you know, the SEC Sideline Sports Network, Buddy Martin Show, Urban Meyer, the Best of Fridays. We're building this network. SECU, let us know. And also, Brenden will put a tutorial up on the screen for anyone, including the Neanderthal man, my father, who is struggling with this
I didn't
right
say
now.
it. I didn't say it, Mr. Brown. I didn't do it.
Grand Bob, I just said it. And you and me are going to have a duel like Marshall Dillon on Gunsmoke. But anyway, I think he's pretty happy I brought him Pete and Sam's last night.
I'm the good son.
I am. Oh, I love him. I'm just saying, I hope he's listening right now. But let's take this now. Let's get going. Get pen and paper handy, because here we come.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, man, we got the full deck right now. John Hartwell, AD at ULM, Matt Dean over at Rhodes, Associate AD. A couple of guys that have coached, that have played, that understand college basketball. Man, a lot was on last night. Caitlin Clark, man, I like this. David Arnoff, Caitlin Clark will never pay for lunch again. Guys, before we get into all this SEC basketball and Sun Belt and everything else, how good is Caitlin Clark for college athletics? Just the way she carries herself. As Sonny would say at Alex's Tavern, I like your atmosphere. I love the way she plays the game, guys. Matt, you are from Iowa.
Good to see you guys. You know, she's one of the finest my great home states ever produced. I'll just say this. I mean, we get enamored. She's got this, you know, the Steph Curry effect with her deep three ball. But I saw a stat the other day. She's one of the top 5 or 6 in the whole entire NCAA history of assists. She's a great passer. She's obviously a great scorer, great distributor of the ball. Sometimes I worry about the parts around her. No disrespect, but last year in the title game against LSU, they had a lot of depth. They put a lot of emphasis on Caitlin. So looking ahead to the NCAA tournament this year, some other players around her is going to need to step up for them to make a deep run like they did last year. But, they got to the title game. One of the things that bothered me a couple of weeks ago, Jay Williams made a comment about, she can't be great essentially until she wins the national championship. Never stopped Larry Bird. He made it to the title game, lost to Magic Johnson, had a pretty good career. Caitlin Clark is phenomenal. That's better than great in my opinion.
Yeah, and Charles Barkley, pretty good too as well. He's in the Hall of Fame. John Hartwell, you talk about it, Caitlin Clark. That's what, when you grew up as a kid, you played out in the backyard or in the driveway, neighborhood basketball. Just she didn't come in as a superstar. She's what college sports are really all about.
Yeah, I think if you look at it from a basketball purist standpoint, and really, I'll say something here that may be a little controversial to some. I think that's part of the reason why the appeal of women's basketball has grown so much in recent years, because it's more about the X's and O's. It's not about jumping 2 feet above the rim or anything else. And I think, again, from a basketball purist standpoint, that has helped develop women's basketball and the affinity to women's basketball from a lot of people out there. But Caitlin Clark, she's not, Wonder Woman or Supergirl in a cape. She's just what I would call a lunch pail basketball player. She's not jumping over the top of people. She's not, running by people, but she knows her limitations. She's adapted to those limitations, and she's arguably, the best women's player to ever play.
Yeah. And she's just the way you think about it. I've got 2 boys and 2 girls. Look at her over there signing autographs after the game. Sure, I'm sure she's got great NIL and everything like that. I know plenty of people that make a lot of money that are really good people, and they go to the late night Lenten reflection at Mass. That make good for they. Just because you have money doesn't mean you're a jerk. We got to stop saying that. But there are plenty of people that have it that think that's all they got to do. But it's fun. Look what they're scalping those tickets for women's basketball. And you know what? Proof that the free market, you got a great product, people will pay up for it. All right, guys.
Well, I just wanted to say, not to interrupt you, Rob, but, Franz Beard made a comment last night in his article. He said, here I walk into a football press conference. I can't even get, the time of day from Billy Napier or whatever. I go into the basketball game. I see Todd Golden on the bench. He, says hi to me, gets up, comes over, asks me about my family, asks me about my parents. How are they doing? He's like, I don't even know how he knew about my parents needing any help. He said he engaged and he already knew. So I think we're seeing, basketball as a whole, especially at Florida and these SEC teams, because they're sort of used to having to go out there and be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more accepting the media because football dominated so much.
Well, hearing what he just said, John, if I'm an athletic director and Matt, I'm going to go out there and meet and greet the people, tailgate with them. I've always said I'd love to see coaches go out there after a game, win or lose, because you know what? If you want to be the coach and you want the people and the fans to embrace you, you got to go hang out with them. And we've got to get away from this after the game. The coaches are whisked away into their castles and they have nothing to do with the fans. I'm sick of it. And then when the fans come after them, they don't like that. And I don't like the censorship that's going on in the press. Like we talked about yesterday with Mitch Davis, and Brenden was saying this. You go ask the wrong questions at a press conference, some tough questions, all of a sudden you are blackballed and you can't ask any more questions. Open your program up, and I'm telling you, people will embrace it. And the media, I think, guys, will be more fair right now. If they can find something on you, they're going after you. John, I'll start with you, and then Matt, bounce that one around.
Yeah, I think accessibility and transparency are really important in anything that you do, but certainly in college athletics. And there are some things, if it comes to student athlete discipline issue or some things like that, where you can't be a total open book, but the accessibility and transparency make you real, and real. People want realness. They don't want a fake facade. They want to see what the person is really like. And I think that goes back all the way back to recruiting of student athletes. I think, obviously talent is important, but if you swing and miss on character, there have been a ton of teams that are more talented than others that they didn't have the character and chemistry that were not as successful at the end of the day. And that does play a part in winning. And I think you're right. There's an obligation there, whether it's a coach and obviously it's a hot topic right now. We're talking about coaches' compensation, NIL compensation, all of those things. That is a component of a coach's compensation or an athletic director's compensation. You have got to be accessible, available, and as transparent as possible to the media or to your fan base or to anybody else.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. I like to always say this, sweeping, D1, D2, D3. Matt Dean, what y'all do for the Ed Murphy Track Classic. You open up the whole damn campus, top athletes in the world, track and field there last year, Thursday and Friday and Saturday, early August last year, August 4th and 5th. Unbelievable. But you're the front porch of the university is the athletic program, Matt, and you know that better than anybody. You've coached. Not many people have coached men's and women's basketball. You understand it. I just wish more people would take that, what John just said. And by the way, happy birthday. Maury just reminded me a week ago to John Hartwell, 39 years old. Hell yeah. There we go.
Hey, I appreciate that, Rob.
What's your birthday? What's your actual birthday?
Yeah, what's your actual birthday?
What's your actual birthday?
Last Friday, the 23rd.
I'm 25th, baby. Come on.
Hey, Pisces.
Get up, Pisces. What up? Rise up. Rise up.
It's just in. Wenzel's Oyster House is airlifting 1,000 pounds of shucked oysters for John's birthday. Wenzel's or Acme, or maybe you can go to Constantine's, which is my mom's favorite restaurant in the history of Mobile. But I digress.
Clams and Lowenbrow, man.
Hey, even better, I'm going to Mobile late tomorrow afternoon, so I'll try to hit it on my way through.
There you go. There you go. Because Will Johnson always says, Brown, I don't eat seafood if it's not fresh. And in Memphis and other places like that, usually it's frozen, so you can always tell when it's got the pellet ice on there, it's really seafood. Matt, look, let's talk about this, man, making the coaches and everybody accessible. If you do that, Todd Golden doing that to Brenden, that's pretty damn cool. Look,
it was a Franz. Yeah.
Or to Franz.
Yeah.
I mean, the Franz ambassador. Yeah. I mean, everybody. But I'm going to get this conversation going. I hope people are listening.
Well, I think another thing that's really impressive about that is that actually means that Coach Golden is paying a little bit of attention to what some of the work around him. I mean, I know we get a little sensitive sometimes when people take a shot, but just to get in the moment before a game and you see a sports reporter, a sports writer, and to do something like that says to me a lot about his integrity and character. To be honest with you, we've been in a market at a Division III school like I'd worked at for 3+ decades. With everything was, Rob, you lived here. It's all Memphis.
Yeah.
So we don't have the option to do some of the things that higher level programs do in our city. We have to be extremely transparent. We have to be open. If someone says, hey, we want to come talk to you, of course, our doors are open. We want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is unfortunate is, we've lost a little bit of our sense of urgency in this matter. What I mean by that is, reflecting back to what John said, some of these coaches now with their enormous salaries and their NIL deals with the student athletes, we've become above the game. I mean, let's go back to 30. I remember the days of Al McGuire. I remember the days of Rick Majerus when he was on the bench, when Al McGuire was emotional when they beat North Carolina in the late 70s in the NCAA championship game. The passion. And then he went on to an unbelievable broadcasting career, You don't, these deals are still happening, but we don't have the iconic figures in the booth like we used to because everything's transactional in terms of what can you do for me? It's not what you can give back to the game of basketball.
Yeah, and I remember Rick Majerus lived in a hotel, if I'm not mistaken, in Salt Lake City. Just a big old burly guy, hell of a coach, though. And it's one of those days you would stay up late at night and watch the basketball. John, I got to ask you, and you are in Monroe, Uncle Si and the Duck Commander, and all. And I've met them 6 or 7 times at different outdoor trade shows. And I remember talking to the duck commander. I had 2 of my kids with me. I said, what do you think about picking up the decoys every time you hunt? Should you leave them or should you pick them up? He goes, well, you want to kill ducks? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, after a few days, a duck will figure out ducks don't stay there for a week. So, yeah, move them around. He goes, any more questions? I mean, he's a really cool guy, but you talk about somebody that is famous beyond, just duck hunting, whatever. What are your interactions like, if you've had any, with him or Uncle Si? And is Uncle Si, he's a fairly normal guy, isn't he?
Yeah, the one I've had the most interaction with is Jace Robertson, who was one of Willie's, cohorts there. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago at a women's basketball game, going back to the popularity of women's basketball, I had Jace Robertson of Duck Commander fame sitting on one side, and Stan Humphries, Super Bowl quarterback for the San Diego Chargers back in the late 90s, on the other side. So just down to earth people. And again, that goes back to accessibility. People want to see real. And I was having this conversation with somebody the other day about effectiveness of coaches, going back to that. And I know it's an age-old saying, but I think it may hold true even more today in the world of NIL and all these other distractions out there. And this applies to student athletes, it applies to donors, everything. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And student athletes are very perceptive. They can see through that. If coaches are just going through the motions of things, kids are not going to want to run through the wall for them. That's again, another cliche a little bit, but one of the greatest things you can say about a coach is, hey, the kids that play for them, they will run through a wall for them. And I think that's so important, and that's something that was there 50 years ago. It's there today. It's going to be there 50 years from now, about how kids respond to coaching.
Well, I wanted to ask you all this question based on what you just said, John. I think what the SEC football coaches per se, I think, or football coaches have enjoyed a little bit of this break. They haven't had to work as hard, and maybe NIL and maybe all of this sort of kind of compounding on this season and what's happening. They're going to have to be a little bit more proactive now about getting back out there, a la old school, where my dad's got some of the greatest stories ever hanging out with coaches, playing poker with coaches and coaches' wives. And, just like, it was more of like, hey, we're all in this together sort of a thing. I think, I wonder if we're going to see a little bit more of that now from SEC coaches in football, because of the fact that right now it's a PR nightmare.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's important, both at the conference level and the individual institution level. I know, and I've heard him speak several times, and he's actually available to institutions, and I know some institutions have used him. Ari Fleischer, who was the longtime White House press secretary. Unbelievable guy.
Unbelievable, yeah.
He has spoken a couple of times to our Lead One group, which is all of the FBS athletic directors. And I think it's real important for student athletes and coaches alike to have media training, to not be so flustered by a curveball question, but that only comes through experience and training. And you'd a whole lot rather have that in a classroom setting and training than somebody in front of a live mic with ESPN or whoever else.
And wasn't that some of the collectives thing that we first heard about in this whole thing, guys, was that the collectives were really going to get into this? Well, we're going to have a media department and a team, and we're going to teach these guys how to talk and all that. I know I heard that rhetoric, as these collectives were sort of forming, but that has definitely fallen by the wayside.
Well, I'm gonna say this. I've got my attorney, Barry Blackman, when he would always tell me this, and he passed away about 10 years ago. It's the best I've ever worked with. He said, when I go into these small towns to meet with these different people, I don't show up in a Mercedes or a Lamborghini, even though I've had a great career as an attorney. He goes, I drive a truck, and I dress, I'm wearing, mountain khakis and some boots and a button down. kind of laid back. When the fans are seeing a 17-year-old kid pull up in a Lamborghini and they're struggling and taking out student loans to send their children to school, look, I'm a capitalist. Y'all know that. I mean, it's all about, but show some class. I mean, that's another thing. And Matt, I think when you think about student athletes, I think it'll be really cool. And I know some of them are doing some foundation work. They don't have to, but it's a good look. And I talked to a guy that's running a collective who said each person that contributes is assigned 5 student athletes that they are mentoring. They teach them how to dress, how to look people in the eye when they're talking to them. Don't wear your pants hanging out, tuck your shirt in. Look people in the eye. Yes or no, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. That goes a long way. And I've got news for these people. They're going to have to get out of this little protective safe space that they've got right now that they're carving out, and they better be ready for it. And Matt, I've worked with a lot of the interns from Rhodes College that came to us over the years at Duncan Williams and different places. They all showed up. You know what they said? What can I do to help? That's a credit to you and the coaches over there staying on them. And John knows that, having gone to the Citadel. Discipline, hard work works.
I want to expand a little bit on the point John made about, some of the coaches in the past, and, that term, John's right. I would run through a wall for you, right? As a student athlete, I would run through a wall for you. And to me, I was taught that at an early age as a young assistant coach from my mentor, Coach Herb Hilgeman. And I just, in one word, I sum up as accountability. And what I mean by that is when we would go in the locker room after a game, if we were fortunate enough to win that game, Coach would praise the players and say, this win is because of everyone in this room. If we were not so fortunate and we lost the game, he would stand up there, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. Players know too sometimes when they screwed up, but he would say, fellas, this is on me and us as a staff, and we're going to work to get better the next time we're in practice. And it's simple like that. And when you have that type of energy in a building, I don't care what sport, everyone knows that it starts from the top, and coach has your back if I don't play well. And that we can't play perfect every game. We can't play well every game. But, man, we need that support from the top. And, another thing you're talking about, some of this media connection. Well, I can just go by the experiences I have seen. I've had a son that's worked in Power 5 football now for 6 years. I thought Texas A&M had a phenomenal building, tremendous resources. But what Dan Lanning has done in the 2 years at Oregon, those kids are going through media training. They're bringing in reporters to work with these kids as future NFL prospects, whatever, not just NFL, how they handle the media after a tough loss or a big win. Those things I think are probably even happening in John's building. Okay, so the leadership starts from the top. And when you tell me we have some things going wrong with how coaches are treating media at whatever institution, whoever the AD is not getting his or her point across to that head coach. That should never happen. I don't care how many championships you win. I don't care how narcissistic you are. I don't care how arrogant you are. You be humble and you respect the process.
Yeah, and it is the media training. You're right. I mean, yeah, look at there. Good God.
How are you gonna combat it when you got Louis?
Yeah, and that's another thing is this coaching your own kids. Most coaches will tell you they don't want to coach their own kids. That and hitting a fastball is about as hard a thing there is to do. Bottom line is it starts with travel baseball and all this competitive soccer and travel soccer and all. Me. John, what's the first thing you learned when you got to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina? That you are no longer an individual. Yeah. You're part of something bigger than you. You're part of a team. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no I in team, and you sacrifice personal goals for the good of the team or the good of the company. And that's something that's instilled early. And you go back to Dion there, and he's done some great things, and obviously brought some notoriety to that Colorado program. But it's hard to talk about team. Going back to coaching your own son, when your sons are in Milan, Italy, walking down the runway with Louis, and I would venture to say there probably aren't any offensive or defensive linemen on that team that are having those opportunities. So again, are you sacrificing what the team's goals and objectives are for individual desires? And if you are, it's going to be really, really difficult for that team to be highly successful.
It is frustrating because the only names people are familiar with for Colorado are Deion Sanders' two sons, Shadur and Shiloh Sanders, and then Travis Hunter from Sewanee, Georgia, Collins Hill High School. But you know what's weird? Florida State people that I talk to that love Florida State, they're not fans of Deion Sanders. That's the weirdest thing out there. But anyway, all that being said, you need to make it about the team. And this where we are right now. Look at this SEC basketball race. Look at the interest. Look at the excitement. I got to say this. There's a lot happening in college athletics, and I got two of the smartest guys out here. And I'm going to bounce it back between all of y'all. Greg Sankey and the Big Ten commissioner getting together. We're going to try to fix some things. At the end of the day, how long will it take them to fix things to where, because the women are doing things the right way, embracing the fans, making themselves much more accessible. We cannot afford to lose the men's. You don't want to alienate the fans.
Go ahead, Matt. It's probably Matt and Brenden answering this question because you set it up as two of the smartest guys in college athletics. That's not me.
Not me. No.
Well, John, I'll start off with this. I think the thing that's got to get fixed, the elephant in the room, is what are we going to do in the next couple of years with football, in my opinion? Because one of the worst decisions, and I think Chip Kelly touched on this before, ironically, he left for UCLA as a head coach to work for one of his good friends, Ryan Day, as an OC at Ohio State. But, when we're talking about sending a Pac-12 school now in the Big Ten to play volleyball on the East Coast. I mean, the whole decision on the Pac-12, was based on one sport. So that we should have been more transparent, and we should get to a point where we figure out the football side of things. I mean, I think John Hartwell will be a great commissioner for the whole process, but he's got his work cut out for him right now. But I'm just telling you, you got to get football figured out how we're going to handle it moving forward, okay? And that also includes Group of 5, Power 5. That's all I'm saying. And after that, we need to get back to the reality of what works in a conference model. And I'm just telling you, it is so tough on these student athletes, the travel component, especially in certain sports, that people don't even look at. They just want to turn their TV on and watch good basketball. They don't know how they get from A to B. I'm just telling you, on the road, I've done it. If we're not eating a meal, we're preparing for our next meal. That's part of the thing that's really challenging. And the travel component has gotten harder for all of us. It's great if I'm a charter in a football program, but what if I'm flying commercially with my softball team the whole year? That's not exactly exciting, guys.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I think you make some great points there, Matt. And clearly football is the driver because of the revenue, the dollars involved in it. But we can't blow up everything else that's good about college athletics across so many other sports strictly for football. I was reading this morning, and you guys may have already read this. Pat Forty put out an article last night on SI.com talking about the CFP format and everything else. And, clearly when the SEC and the Big Ten created that alliance, there were intentions there to flex their muscles, which continue to happen. Yeah. And, do we go from 12 to 14? Is it 3 SEC, 3 Big Ten, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, 1 Group of 5, and 3, next highest rated teams? Wherever that plays out, there's a great quote in here, and it does not say, who said this, but it does say it's a Power 5 conference administrator expressed reservations about further marginalizing the group of 5 leagues. And I don't say this because I'm in a group of 5 right now. I say this, I think this is one of the real challenges right now. They're our feeder system. They feed us players. They feed us coaches. They feed us games. They feed us ADs. But once the coaches and athletic directors move up to the power conference level and experience all the advantages, they develop amnesia about where they came from. And there is a lot of truth in that. And somehow, and I don't have the exact answer, but somehow we've got to protect the enterprise. And again, I don't say that from a personal standpoint of saying, oh my gosh, we've got to protect our teams in the group of 5, which I do think that from a personal level, but I think that from a holistic level for the long-term good of not just college football, but all of college athletics.
Well, the bottom line is what you just said. We don't need an entitlement. We got enough of that crap. Every spot ought to be up for grabs. I love competition. You know, that's what we love. Now, look, there are there's automatic bids for conferences in basketball, but there's a lot of them. Then there's at-large bids. I don't want to see, let's say you've guaranteed 3 spots for the Big Ten. Do you want to see an 8-4 team in there or 7-5? Because that can happen. I remember the 1979 Georgia would have gone to the Sugar Bowl had they beaten Auburn. But Auburn won that game 33-13 when Frank Warren and Freddie Smith sandwiched Buck Blue in the end zone for a safety early on. And James Brooks had 14 carries for 200 yards and Joe Cribbs 20 for 166. Alabama went on to the Sugar Bowl that year and beat Arkansas 24-9 for the national championship. It almost happened. I'm with John. I love college athletics on every level. That's why I have you on here and Matt on here to shake it up from different levels. But y'all have also been at the big level. You got a son, Matt, that's in Power 5 coaching at Texas A&M, now at Oregon. Matt, I mean, my God, I'll be in Oxford later today. We're going to spend the night down there and do the show tomorrow from the Vitamin Shop's new location over in Oxford. I'm excited about that. We're going to go out to dinner in Oxford tonight. You lived there 10 years. Look at Ole Miss people. There was a time when Ole Miss people didn't think they could get up off the ground. And right now, heading into next year, they're one of the hottest programs in all of college football, and they got 5,000 people on the waiting list to get baseball season tickets. The American dream is if you work your ass off, you can accomplish anything. And that's what we need to always have out there as a carrot to keep people motivated. I don't want guaranteed spots or anything like that. I love everybody. Nothing's guaranteed. You got to get up every day and prove yourself. That's just how I am.
And I wanted to dovetail to the Matt and John, to both of you on this, because Rob and I were talking off the air yesterday after the show, and I said to Rob, you know, one thing that I actually think will help save this process is the fact of player competition, right? Like, you know, there is always going to be somebody that wants somebody's spot, right? We forget about the fact that there are plenty of people and plenty of men and women out there that are just trying to get a scholarship. They're just trying to get on, and that no matter if this, you know, so and so comes in a hot recruit and's getting paid money, whatever, they still got to fight for that spot. And that's the only leverage that coaches are going to really have in this whole thing, is that, well, you know, the best player is going to play. I really, you know, now that we're getting into spring football, we're now embarking on something like the NCAA tournament, which is, by the way, where the NCAA shines all year long, right? It is March Madness. So do you have faith in the system as far as that's concerned, with the players having to still keep their starting spot? Because if you don't keep your spot, your NIL money goes away. You know, a lot of that matters. Am I thinking correctly there?
Yeah, I really think you are, Brenden. A couple of points. And that's the one thing to caution for those who say, oh, gosh, just go ahead and pay them, you know, make it pay for play. Because keep in mind that in the NFL or Major League Baseball or any of those, you know, those guys on any given day can come in and find a yellow card in their locker. And that yellow card means, hey, we're done with you. You didn't produce enough. We're paying for you to produce, and go pack your stuff up and go. That you know, for 18 to 22-year-old kids who sign up for a collegiate education, I don't think that should be part of the deal. I mean, there's got what has been lost in all of this, and some may call me a purist, and some may say, "Oh no, the educational component of being a student athlete can't just get thrown aside for commercialism and for the almighty dollar." We've got to keep focus on that, and for every get rich quick NIL person that there are 100 other student athletes who have competed, whether it's Division 1, 2, 3, NAI, any of those levels, who have had an unbelievable experience as a student athlete and gotten a great education that has helped form a solid foundation for them to be productive citizens across all walks of life for the next 50, 60, 70 years. And we get caught up in this minority. It's a very vocal minority of high level athletes who are very accomplished. I'm not taking anything away from them, but there's an avenue for that as well. And I think we've got to find the balance in there to protect both ends.
Well, what we've got to do right now with fans is, let me throw some things out there. Obviously it's in the middle of basketball season, but we don't do the same thing every day. It's kind of what's on our minds. SEC Sidelines Sports Network. We're talking college athletics, the big picture. What I see happening is that there's nothing being done, in my opinion, to try to slow down what's going on in December. The portal opens December 5th. Then you've got NIL. Then you've got national early signing date. And then if you're getting ready for a bowl, you got to mess with that. I'm just saying, John, Matt, Gary Harris is about to join us from Tuscaloosa. We're going to get into some basketball at Alabama and what's going on down there. But we've got to have leadership. And we talked about this. I mean, y'all know how the NCAA works, but we got to have some leaders. Fans, people follow leadership. They do nothing when there's a void of leadership, don't they?
Well, let me just you mentioned about the NIL. I mean, the national signing date, and there's a proposal out there, John. I think they want to add another session in June, right? So, ironically, this affects my family because my son, who's at Oregon, just booked a flight for one of his best friend's weddings in June, and there's a proposal that could make him have to cancel his flight just because of the timing again. And here's the thing: no one has a violin session, a sad sob story for these staff members or these coaches making all this money. I get that. But what it's doing, it's taking really good people and making them make career changes, whether or not they've been in this for a long time and we can sustain that. We can get new people in there to build their careers. But, I mean, we're doing too much. We're just doing way too much. And I think, my point is I always felt like less is more. When basketball season was over, basketball's such a long sport. I coached it for 26 years. You show up on campus, you're already playing pickup. Then you got workouts. October, you're trying to work around the Thanksgiving holiday. You're scheduling. You have the Christmas, the New Year's holiday. Yeah. And then you're in March and you're playing for the most important time of the year. Well, you have to manage your legs. You have to manage your body. And less is more. In the month of February, I told you about the dog days of February. Yeah. You got to be smart with those kids' bodies. And I always believe the teams that make a rise in the last 6 weeks have been managed really well. Now, they got to be talented. I get that. But they've been managed really well.
Yeah. Hey, Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 WVUA Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa joins us. And got John Hartwell, AD at ULM, Matt Dean up at Rhodes College in Memphis, talking college basketball. Man, Alabama, they're just pounding out the points. Go on the road, fall behind early at Ole Miss. It's the stretch run. Nate Oates is playing a brand of basketball that reminds you a lot of what Nolan Richardson did, 40 minutes of hell. Alabama's got Tennessee coming in Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, 64 points in the second half last night at Ole Miss. He's had some teams since he's been here that were really good on defense. If you look at defensive efficiency rankings, this isn't one of them. So, that would be the biggest difference between Nolan Richardson's teams and this team is that team guarded. Alabama, they're hard to prepare for. I mean, you can't, simulate, I think, how fast they play and everything in practice. They did it still without Latrell Wrightsell Jr. Cosby stepped up last night. But they got to play better defense than they played at Kentucky. Obviously, all the Kentucky shot the lights out. I'm not sure anybody would have beat them that day. But they're not going to be a great defensive team. I think it's too late now to kind of, the identity of this team is the identity of this team. Good news is they don't have to hold you to, 60 points to win. I mean, Alabama, I think this is, 5 straight games over 95 points, 9 games over 100 now, which ties 95-96 Kentucky. That 5 straight over 95, I think, ties the Arkansas team that you were referring to. So they can really score the basketball. The problem is we've seen it in, their 3 losses in the SEC were all on the road at Tennessee, at Auburn, at Kentucky, and they got blown out in every one of them. Pre-conference when they played, they didn't win many of those games. They didn't beat Purdue. They didn't beat Arizona. They didn't beat Creighton. So their MO is that, especially against teams that can't keep up, they can really make you look bad. But when they play really good, experienced teams, are they going to be able to defend well enough, particularly teams that have good inside post play? We'll see. Matchups will be important for this team, but you mentioned it Saturday night. Clearly, the winner of that game is going to be the favorite to win the SEC regular season championship, although both teams will still have to play a couple more games, and Alabama still has to go to Florida. But Saturday night's a huge game. Yeah,
the first time ever ESPN Game Day is coming to Tuscaloosa. That will be it can be a distraction. And Reese Davis, the whole crew will be there. It's an all-day ordeal, and it's a night game. What time is tip-off Saturday?
8:00, and I think they kind of try to design it that way when they come to, but that's a good thing, I think, because again, because Oates is going to be out there at game day, and it kind of gives everybody a chance to hit a reset button. You're hyped up for the game day experience, but then for the team, they'll be at the hotel doing whatever. Nick Oates will get back over there. You have to kind of relax and settle in. But I kind of like the fact that it's 8:00 game. I think it's tougher on the road team than it is the home team, because the home team's still in a familiar environment, and for a road team, it's sitting around all day as well. And so, it is what it is. It's 8:00 tip. Tennessee, I still think, is the most well-rounded team in the SEC in terms of experience, in terms of defending, pretty good on offense, great coach, 800-win coach in Rick Barnes. So I think even though Alabama's at home, they're going to have to play really well to win the game. But I certainly think they can. And, the fact that they got thumped at Tennessee, Nate Oates doesn't lose twice to many teams. If you look at since he's been at Alabama, there have been very few teams that have beaten him twice in a season. So it's going to be a good one.
John, when Dalton connects, Tennessee is really good. That was bad attempted humor.
Yeah, I think Gary makes a great point about, both the stretch play in the SEC and then in the tournament, and then obviously the NCAA tournament. Alabama's style of play, getting up and down the floor, getting that many shot attempts up is really tough to defend. In a little different way, but somewhat similar to the team 45, 50 miles up the road at Samford. That's what Samford does. Although they got handled night before, I saw where they lost pretty big, like 91-69 or something like that to Wofford, I believe. But that hurts an at-large bid. Again, Southern Conference, you probably got to win your league no matter how good of a regular season they've had. But getting up that many shot attempts is hard to defend. You don't have to play a whole lot of defense if you're scoring 95 points a game. But as Gary said, if you run into solid post play and you get behind somebody and somebody that has solid post play, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's Purdue in the NCAA tournament, solid bigs inside can sometimes neutralize that if you get behind them early.
Yeah. Gary, in response to that, Sears is just 95% free throw shooter. That's your nightmare at the end if you're trying to foul somebody. and they're going to get the ball in his hands. Where are you most concerned about Alabama? Last year, they had everything. They were the number 1 seed, got knocked out by San Diego State, but here they are again with basically an all-new team. How many guys returned from last year's squad?
Yeah, first of all, last year I thought that team would go to the Final Four. A little bit young, but boy, so talented. And then obviously they had the issue with the unfortunate situation during the season. And then Brandon Miller, not everybody knows this. He was probably maybe 75% in the NCAA tournament. He was not himself. He had been dealing with an injury, and he didn't. He picked a stretch there to have his 3 worst games of the season in the NCAA tournament, even though they won 2 of them. That really impacted that team. But you're right. The roster had to be turned over. You lost Miller, who you expected to lose. But when they signed Noah Clowney, they didn't think he'd be one and done. And you lost Clowney. They certainly thought Bediako was coming back. And then he left and, was second-round pick of the Spurs. And then Quinterly transferred out late. And also Namari Burnett, who's at Michigan. So those were 4 starters and another really valuable guy, Burnett, off the bench. Then he lost his entire assistant coaching staff. All 3 of those guys got head jobs. So he had to turn the roster over and hire a new staff. So I do think, based on what I thought this team would be capable of, I thought they'd be pretty good because he brought in some good players. I did not think they would be leading the SEC with, 3 games to go. I really didn't. So I think he's done a remarkable job when you lose that much production from a team that, was the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, in the pre-portal days, you couldn't have done it. But even in the portal era and NIL era, they probably shouldn't be where they're at. And we'll see if they can finish it off. But I think Coach has done an incredible job with this basketball team, bringing in all the new players, plugging in guys, not really having a rim protector because they counted on Bediako being that guy. And, maybe being a little thin inside. But they got a lot of versatile players. You mentioned Sears, man, what a phenomenal year. I know Connect has been incredible too. But, boy, I tell you, without Mark Sears, and Mark Sears left, you're looking at about a 500 team in the SEC. That's how valuable he is to Alabama.
Matt Dean. Yeah.
This all plays out for, I think, a wonderful SEC tournament. And I've said this for weeks now. I believe Alabama is one of 4 or 5 teams in that league that can make a very deep run, if not to the Final Four. We're looking at Tennessee, Alabama this weekend, but gosh, I just looked at the schedule. You got to go at Florida right after that game, right? And Tennessee's still going to go at South Carolina. Tennessee's got the last game of the year. They're playing a Kentucky team that right now, even though it's going to be in Knoxville, Kentucky's kind of clicking on all cylinders right now. South Carolina gets a big win last night. We're not talking at all about the collapse of A&M. They've lost 5 in a row after Buzz had him in a pretty good spot in the league. And Auburn last night, what's incredible about last night's game, I don't think I've watched Tennessee a ton this year, but Auburn goes on a 23-6 run. I think they're up 63-55. Dalton Connect over the last 12 minutes, he outscores Auburn himself 25-21. And he's a guy that pulls up, he waves off the ball screen, he drops a 25-footer, you go out and press man, he goes by and flushes a dunk. Pretty good get for Tennessee. A Northern Colorado kid that comes in to have that type of impact of the SEC. And the last thing I'm going to go on a tangent here for John. The other night, I got to give you credit, your old place. I was watching a little bit of Utah State men's basketball home environment, John. Oh, my God, I had no idea how zany those fans were, man. Kudos to you and your staff throughout the years for helping develop. I know a lot of goes into the team and how good they are and the coaching staff, but there's so many environments right now that are tough to play college basketball. It wouldn't shock me if Alabama rebounds and beats Tennessee handily on Saturday night, then has a tough one and loses at Florida. I mean, that's just where we are. There's no dominant team right now. We thought UConn was that team. The other night at Creighton just clocked them. Then Creighton loses to St. John's after Pitino rips his team and basically says in a nutshell, it's my most unenjoyable team. He comes out in the all-white suit and then beats Creighton and says, I was just saying that to motivate my team. Whatever.
Gary, wouldn't you love to play on a team when your coach says, you're the most miserable group of guys? Oh. But it worked. It worked, didn't it?
Yeah, Pitino is, I think he's as good as there's ever been as a college basketball coach. I mean, the psychological game, the ability to evolve. He's a little bit like Saban in regards to being able to evolve with the game. But, yeah, the Miami Vice Don Johnson suit. But this is college basketball, and I still think UConn is, in my opinion, the team to beat. I still think they're the team to beat in the tournament. But you're right, and just to the point about Alabama, I kind of agree with that. I think Alabama's going to win Saturday night. Then I think they're going to lose at Florida. Don't count Kentucky out. If Kentucky wins out, they could still get a piece of this thing. But if Alabama can win Saturday night, and even if they lose at Florida and they come home and beat Arkansas, they're going to get at least a share of the championship. So, but work to be done. But college basketball, it's you used to 20 years ago, good teams were good teams, and you would just pretty much every now and then they would get a hiccup, but for the most part, if you were better than somebody, you were just better than somebody. But now, it's a game-to-game deal. Just because you look great one game, there's absolutely no guarantee that you're going to look good the next one. It's a potpourri of just of teams trying to survive every time they go out there.
John, I know you've got to get out for a meeting, but love having you on here. Let people know how they can follow you. We'll finish up here after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one quick point to follow up what Gary and Matt said. We get caught up in the transfer portal with football and what it does for football. But keep in mind, basketball, you've only got 5 guys on the floor. You get 1 impact or 2 impact transfers, and you've got role guys around them, and you can flip a team almost instantly. And I think that's part of the beauty of what you're seeing. Also, the other thing I think to keep in mind is places like Creighton and Villanova and Marquette, places like that don't have to have a collective to fund football, can pump all that money into men's basketball. Yeah. And you're going to see that be a difference maker. I'll give you a perfect example. So the other night when Creighton beat UConn, number one, the point guard for Creighton is a guy named Stephen Ashworth, who, by the way, played for 3 years at Utah State, was a 1,000-point scorer at Utah State. Whoa. He goes to Creighton because of a very lucrative NIL deal. Great student. He's working on his MBA, but he's a difference maker for them. He scored like 24 the other night in their victory over UConn. Great. So those impact players that you can get in the day's transfer portal really means something. Hey, thanks, guys, as always, for being on. ULMWarhawks.com, busy time of year right now. Our softball team, coached by an Alabama alum, Molly Finkner, who played for Pat Murphy, was a catcher there. We're 14-5 in softball, really good start for our softball team. Women's basketball continues to churn. We're looking at a 20-win season. One more regular season game. Our conference tournament, actually the Sun Belt men's and women's tournaments are a little bit before everybody else's. Start next Tuesday down in Pensacola. Championship games the following Monday. A lot going on, but as always, guys, love visiting with y'all. Y'all have a great day.
Go Bulldogs, go Mobile. Have fun in Mobile. Hey, Gary, and I love this time of year. There's nothing going on, is there? In Tuscaloosa, you're in the hunt for an SEC basketball race. You got a great show every morning on Tide 100.9, Tider Insider TV. You and Rodney Orr. You've got baseball kicking off, spring practice with Kalen DeBoer going on. You got softball, gymnastics. I mean, honestly, you got to love your job. You don't ever feel like it's going to work. I mean, you've got one of the greatest jobs in the world. Matt, think about that. In Tuscaloosa, on campus, Channel 23. How much fun is what you do? And what advice would you give for some young kid that says, I want to be like Gary Harris?
Well, it is fun. It's the most difficult aspect on the TV side is, and you know this, Rob, from your TV days, is just having time to get everything in. You know, such a limited amount of time and so many sports going on at the same time. Plus, we got the state basketball tournament going on over at Legacy Arena in Birmingham. So we're trying to balance that with our teams this week. So it's fun. And the advice I give is, it's fun, but you do have to be able to remove your fandom if you're going to do this job correctly. Yeah. And a lot of kids think about, I want to be a sportscaster because it's fun. I get to cover games, but it is different. And, I have to point that out to them. When you're covering a game, you're not a fan. You can't be sitting up there cheering, high-fiving, although, occasionally we see some people that do that. But it's just being able to remove your fandom and keep your head in it because especially if you're, covering a game for a story that night, I mean, you got to track it differently. So, it is fun, but it's still a job. It's still a profession. And I think we've lost sight of that a little bit with social media and podcast. And, we do have fans that never would have, and I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying they never would have had an opportunity to do this. And now it's kind of opened up to everybody. But the good ones remember that it's a job. Hey, great being with you guys. I'm gonna take off.
Let me ask you one more thing real quick. I listened to your interview last week with Eli Gold. You are a great interviewer. What's his next step in life? Because I think he's a great broadcaster. I remember him in NASCAR, So what's he doing?
He's great. He's already signed on to be the Nashville Cats play-by-play announcer. That's the Arena League team in Nashville. And one of the owners is an Alabama grad. So, he won't have to move. It's only, well over 2 hours from Birmingham to Nashville. So he'll be able to go up there, and I'm sure he'll, stay when he's calling games. But he's looking forward to that. Eli's a pro, and, he tackles every assignment, whether it's an Alabama football game or now an Arena League game, the same way. So he'll be fine. I know he's disappointed, Rob, as you heard in the interview.
Yeah.
This is not the way he wanted to go out, but if you stay in this business long enough, sometimes it happens. Hey, enjoy it, guys.
I'd love to have him on the show. Thank you. Matt, God, I love this basketball. And Brenden, we were watching last night. We're talking about Caitlin Clark, the women's game, the men's game. This is just an awesome time of the year. There's so much. The office pools are coming up, the bracket. I hate that term, bracketology. But first off, Matt, Brenden texted me this morning at 4:30 a.m. Eastern, and he said, ask Matt Dean this one question if you ask him any questions. Why do they use this stupid term on the bubble and first four in, first four out, or last four in, first four out? Where does this stuff come from? Because Brenden couldn't sleep last night. I couldn't sleep at all last night.
I was just flubbered.
So Brenden, you remember back in the day before we had like the first four in, first four out, next considered, there would just be like a list of 6 to 8 teams, right? And Dick Vitale would come on there and he would say, this team got robbed. I can't believe, baby, they're not going to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And now I think it's just I think we live in like Tony Lenardi's world, and he became more analytical, and he just had these categories. And then I also think, Brenden, you look at with Kim Palm rankings, and also the NCAA created this net. Everybody's got a metric now. Hell, we didn't have metrics back in the day. I'm sure the committee did, but we weren't talking about. I can Google last night. I'm an Iowa fan, a miserable Iowa fan. So we're 59 in the net. Well, you know what that means? Even if we get in, Brenden, we're not very good.
No.
Okay, that's what that means. So I used to be one of those fans that said my team's got to get in. Well, I've learned after coaching for 3 decades, no, if we're not that good, we don't have to get in. But I think it's just a growth of the tournament. And one last thing I want to tell you guys that's an interesting fact, because I'm a Division III guy, 3% of the revenue from Division I March Madness contract funds all the championships at my level in Division III sports. So I am very appreciative as a Division III coach and former athletic director to March Madness. I hope it keeps on growing. And that's the concern, too, from us at Division III. If they ever say, well, screw it, we're going to take all of our pie, then we're going to have to fund our championships, and it'd be a lesser experience for our student athletes.
Well, look, in the term student athlete is thrown around a lot. Rhodes College has about 1,950 students. 527 of them are student athletes. I think I did the Gazendas on that. That's about 27%. And they are taking serious classes. I still remember the stat. 38 out of the 38 students at Rhodes that were applying for medical school, they batted 1,000. Okay? Now, Brenden, we hear this term student athlete used all the time, but these are kids that, Rhodes ain't cheap. It's probably $75,000 a year. And then you're playing sports, managing your time. You know what really it's teaching you how to be is a parent with a career. It's just because, listen, who watches? Here's the debate. I'm going to throw this one at you. We're all, we've all got kids. Who actually goes to more games with their kids growing up, the men or the women? It's not even close. It's the women. Never forget my friend Fran Cunningham. 6 boys in a big Irish Catholic family. One time I saw his mom going to a baseball game when our kids were in like 6th grade, and he goes, Bobby, this is number 2,000 plus games my mother has been to with Jim, Mike, Mark, Bob, John, Fran. The women really know a lot more about sports than we give them credit for. You've coached them, Matt. You've got one playing soccer who's pretty damn good, Brenden. And I mean, I'm telling you, they're easier. Women are easier to coach than men. Best description I heard, a friend of mine said, the girls will bond together. The boys at that young age are like herding cats. I'm just saying, Matt. Is that right?
Just much less ego, guys. Much less ego, attention to detail. They want to execute a game plan. Now, I will tell you, there are days when they come to practice that, sometimes they wear their emotions on their sleeves because it didn't go well in chemistry class, or they had a bad day with their partner or the relationship, whatever. But man, I thoroughly enjoyed my 16 years as a head women's basketball coach. I also coach women's golf. I coach women's field hockey. So I've done that for over, combined over 2 decades. And I just have had a wonderful, blessed career doing that.
Well, I do have to say though, I do see, having an 11-year-old who's in competitive travel soccer, media has such an impact. I mean, they're all on these, all the time, right? That's how this is the new playground, right? Meet you, play, whatever. And I think that this bleed is happening now for the influence. So I do see sort of, especially in the younger teams, and she got a great team, great coach and whatever, but there are a lot of similarities in that game. And I wonder if it's just more of the maturity level. Women mature faster than men, no question.
They do that, sure.
No question. But there's, you wonder how much of it is societal, right, and how much of it is just because now you're raised. My daughter came home yesterday. She's like, I want to play flag football. Well, flag football for co-ed, flag football is like an emerging sport, right?
Yeah.
I want to play baseball. I want to play these other teams, and so. I wonder how much of that, will stay, where these teams are like that, or if we'll start to see a leveling out with it.
I don't know, Matt. I think what you see is when Riley Gaines was on this show back in the summer, Riley talked about swimming, training from 4 years old, and she's 22 years old, and she's getting ready before the race in the locker room, and there's a fully developed male 6'4" Leah Thomas swimmer in there. And like, good God almighty. That crap's got to stop. And I'm disgusted with the NCAA is, again, lack of leadership. Men compete against biological men. Women compete against biological women. And that's just common sense. But I think girls, when they're young, you have tomboys. You had remember the Andy Griffith episode when that girl came over and played football with Opie and the boys, and she was kicking all their butts, and they didn't like that. And because they felt like, well, I'm a man, I'm supposed to be better than you. So I think that's just part of growing up. People will maybe try something different. But Matt, you've coached them, and you talk about how to handle emotion. You're the most laid back guy being around you. You're very calm, and I think that's how your players were. Look at them now that are doctors and attorneys. Their parents, more than anything, their wives. They've got kids, their moms. That's the most important. I mean, that's what we love about sports is to see these people come back 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. What I wonder about now with these kids coming and going, I watched the thing on ACC Network last night. Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, legends. Wes Durham was interviewing them. And they kept laughing, going, with the way college basketball is today, anything goes. You can tell they both are glad they're out of it. We better be careful. I don't want to see, Hurley leaving UConn. Do y'all? I mean, do you want to see that, Matt?
No, and honestly, getting back, kind of to what you were talking about with Riley Gaines, I've never met Riley, but she seems like the most competitive person from afar.
Oh, yeah.
Watched. I mean, and she probably was very disappointed. I think that race you're talking about versus the Leah Thomas, she actually didn't she tie him
him.
She, whatever pronoun I apologize. I'm not great.
I don't give a damn.
But, I mentioned when I was coaching women, I mean, maybe there's less ego involved, but man, there is a ton of competitiveness. Yeah. And my best players, They wanted to be the best students on the classroom. They
Yeah.
wanted to be the best players on the floor. They wanted to be, if they were in a sorority, they wanted to be the president of the sorority. They wanted to do it all. And
correct.
From the guy standpoint, I don't think we're built that way. I mean, we like to do one thing really well, then chill or whatever, get on the couch, whatever. But my women athletes, man, they were so competitive in the game of life, not just the game of basketball, in the game of life. And that was kind of refreshing because they motivated me at times, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you find a mom of 3 or 4 kids. You talk about competitive. Good God Almighty. And I'm telling you, I know it. And you've got boys. Brenden has a daughter. I have 2 now, Hallie, and I remarried. I have Mallory, Wilson, and Max, my boys. They're all very competitive. What you want your kids to be, if they're competitive, they're going to make it in life. If they're competitive and they know how to deal with adversity because they fought through it and their parents didn't walk them through it, they'll be fine. It's just like Brenden and I were laughing about, the older generation with technology, having trouble, figure it out. If I do it for you, you're not going to learn anything. Brenden, I think Matt is frozen out there. I can't hear you, but
this time of day, it's like I think people get back and forth on his internet. He starts to get busy. Class is in session.
We'll wrap it up. But hey, we were at Hewlett and Dunn yesterday. Unbelievable selection of stuff. I got the new duck head pullover and the duck camp trout fishing shirt on.
Oh, it's great. I got the same thing. I got a bunch of that stuff.
Oxford tomorrow. We're going to be down there at the Vitamin Shops opening of the new store, and check out all of our sponsors on the web. We're here. We got a great show in store for you. A lot of Ole Miss players will be joining us tomorrow in Oxford. Hopefully Jackson Dart drops by. We'll be at the Vitamin Shop, Oxford, Mississippi. Remember, catch us live or whenever you consume your podcast. And remember, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Go out every day. Don't let other people tell you how to think. Live your life free. Watch our show. Tell your friends. And we'll be back in the morning. Brenden, great job. Matt, Gary,
Bye, Matt.
John Hartwell.
Yeah, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Matt, he's back.
Bye.
Now he's thawed out. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Take care.
We have to do our wave. You have to wave like this, Rob. This is the Queen does it.
Oh, I bow to no one. Hey, we're out of here. See you in the morning.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shops health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.